Now, today, the Church of England have committed to setting up a £100 million fund to address past wrongs in relation to their links to the slave trade. Now, they are not calling it reparations, but a lot of people are saying it looks and sounds a lot like reparations. A report released today for the Church Commissioners revealed that the C of E's endowment fund, there's a joke in there somewhere, I won't make it, estimated to be worth around over £9 billion, can be traced back to Queen Anne's bounty, a financial scheme established in 1704 based on transatlantic chattel slavery and also the worst chocolate in the box. Everyone knows that bounties are terrible. Anyway, among the contributors to the Queen Anne's bounty was Edward Colston. Remember him off of the statue? We don't need to rake all that up again. Anyway, we do. He was a slave trader whose statue in Bristol was toppled in 2020 by Black Lives Matter activists. Anyway, the Church is not using the term reparations as the scheme won't compensate individuals, but will help focus on projects to improve opportunities for communities adversely impacted by the historic slavery. Anyway, how far back should we go? 1704 was when I read this date out now. 1704. Do we have to go this far back? Do we have to say sorry? People have to pay for stuff that happened then? Do you agree with historical reparations? Because frankly, the world seems to be going that way. This will not be the first and it will not be the last. Doesn't every country on earth have some kind of historical reparation that it needs to do? Don't the French owe us for the Norman invasion? What about the Italians for Roman rule? Here with me to discuss this now is Pentecostal Bishop Joe Aldred and Associate Editor of the Catholic Herald, Dr. Gavin Ashenden. Both of you, thank you very much. I will start with you, Pentecostal Bishop Joe Aldred. Do you think that what the Church of England is doing is right?
Yes, I do. I think it is right. I would like to see more of it. They're not the only ones who are moving in the directions of what I will call reparations, and I think it's a good move. Your substantive question about how far do you go back? This is not a hypothetical thing for me personally. My ancestors, going back to the 16th century, were hauled across the Atlantic in the transatlantic slave trade, and if they were unlucky enough to arrive the other end, they'd be put to work as chattel slaves. And
I do get that. Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question on that? I'll come to you, Dr. Gavin, in a second. But I think this is of vital importance, actually. And can I ask a question on this? So that is shocking, right? Obviously, absolutely shocking and terrible. And I don't think anyone alive today, realistically, thinks that that was anything other than despicable. Do people who are alive today have to pay for that? I mean, I am white, but my family, go back as far as you like, had absolutely nothing to do with the slave trade.
Sure. When that chattel slavery was brought to an end in 1834, actually happened in 1838, the people who owned slaves were paid £20 million in that time's money. That money and all the other benefits from slavery, I'm afraid, permeate the entire country, and I would say several other Western countries who were also involved in the slave trade. So it's not just a historic issue we're talking about. We are saying that riches, that wealth is as present today as it was then. And the lack of wealth, as in my people were chucked out without any compensation for over 300 years of slavery, that poverty continues today.
I'll come back to you. I will come back to you. We're going to go now to the Associate Editor of the Catholic Herald, Dr. Gavin Ashenden. Dr. Gavin, you've heard all of that. Your views?
Well, the trouble is with wokery is it's single issue and virtue signaling. So I would like to say that my ancestors were captured, my white ancestors were captured by black slave traders. And I would like some reparation too, because between 1600 and 1900, 1.25 million Europeans were captured by Barbary pirates and taken to North Africa and sold into slavery there. So we have exactly the same histories. The numbers are even similar. And I'd further want to say we've paid already. To fund the 1833 Slavery Act, we took 40% of the national income. We borrowed to pay off to buy slaves from their owners. We only finished paying that debt in 2014. How many times over would you like to pay? And the fact is that our white ancestors were enslaved by black slavers. It's the same history. You cannot use wokery in order to justify this and treat it as if it's a special pleading, a unique one-off case. Everyone's done slavery.
Bishop Joe Aldred, I'll throw it back your way.
I'm not sure about woke. I'm afraid I don't think I get that thrown at me every day. If you want to make a case,
no, you're not woke. The Church of England's woke.
Oh, I see. If you want to make a case for what you're saying, then make that case. I am simply making the case that that money you talked about, that was indeed only completed, the payment of it by the government in 2015, I think, or 19. That money, not a penny of it, went to any of the slaves or the descendants of slaves. That money was borrowed to pay the slave owners. My point is that money has percolated into British society, and it is from that. People like me, my parents came here in the 1950s as economic migrants. Why? Because Jamaica was a very poor place and they couldn't find the sustenance there. So they came here because there were work here. Why is there work here? Because of that history.
OK, I do understand that. I'm going to, yes again, throw it over to Dr. Gavin. Dr. Gavin, I don't want to sound too ignorant here, but I understand that whilst money is percolating around society today that can be traced back in one way or another to other thing, realistically, aren't the people who are to blame and the people who suffered all dead?
Yes, the problem is, with all due respect, the argument's just been repeated. You were right when you said in the first place that there is no statute of limitations for slavery. The Welsh have done it to the English, the Romans did it to us, the Russians are doing it to people. Slavery has been the normal way. Deformed human beings have badly treated one another. You can't just take the dreadful, tragic African experience and lay it at the hands of the Europeans and say nothing else counts. The fact is, we really did have 1.25 million white people sold into slavery by black African traders. You can't just say we're going to treat only the Americans, the American situation, and not take recognition of the fact that slavery has been a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, it's one we'd like to say we've grown out of it. We haven't grown out of it. We're still practicing it. There's no point at which you can say slavery was a single issue that took place 200 years ago with the Africans.
All right, just on that, because we were just a bit pressed for time. I mean, I think that's an interesting point. Bishop Joe, I have got to put that to you. I mean, black people were enslaving other black people. We just had the point there made by Dr. Gavin that white people over the course of history have been enslaved as well. I mean, do I have a right to ask some people in Africa for reparations?
There is every evidence that slavery has been a phenomenon amongst human beings probably for as long as we have lived. There's no question about that. What we're talking about here is a situation where from the 15th, 16th century to the 19th century, 300 years, that black African slaves were exploited, and the money that they made, their free labor of over 300 years, was what helped to build this country. The point is, it isn't yesterday's conversation because the wealth of that time stretches into today.
I get what you're saying.
The poverty from that time stretches into today.
I get the point that you're making. We're out of time, chaps. I could talk about this all evening, and thank you very, very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know our viewers and our listeners will have done as well. Both of you, really insightful stuff from both different angles. Our Pentecostal Bishop Joe Aldred and Associate Editor of the Catholic Herald, Dr. Gavin Ashenden. I am sure that my inbox is kicking right off as a result of this. I'm going to go now to a statement from the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, who's also the chair of the Church Commissioners. He said the full report lays bare the links of the Church Commissioners' predecessor fund with transatlantic chattel slavery. I am deeply sorry for these links. It's now time to take action to address our shameful past. To be honest, Justin Welby seems to get more and more woke by the day, doesn't he? Look, I did thoroughly enjoy what we were talking about there, but do not get me wrong. Or how far back does this go? And, of course, it's highly unfashionable, isn't it? It's highly unfashionable to say that actually some of the people that some black people should be seeking reparations from are, unfortunately, other black people because of the slave trade that was taking place in Africa.